Governor Gavin Newsom and the Attorney General of California are hell-bent on releasing people from local jails. They don't even want bond anymore. Coming up, I'll tell you why they are trying to spin a false narrative that people somehow are being killed behind bars by sheriff's deputies. I'll tell you the real reason why people are dying and what we're doing to make sure we keep hardened criminals behind bars in your community. Coming up on Reform California with Carl DeMaio. I'm Carl DeMaio, chairman of Reform California, and there is a real dishonest and deceptive narrative that's been spun around local jails. And the narrative that is being spun by the liberal media and Democrat politicians like Gavin Newsom and Attorney General Rob Bonta is that somehow the sheriff's deputies are killing people, that they're thugs, that they're abusing people in these cells, and that a bunch of people are dying, and we've got to come and figure out what's going on, and we've got to study, and we've got to review. We know why people are dying behind bars, and it's not the sheriff's deputies. More on that in just a minute. But let me tell you what's really going on here. You've got Black Lives Matter and a bunch of criminal justice groups, the pro-criminal lobby, saying that they don't want people to be behind bars. And we see this everywhere. I mean, they got George Soros prosecutors that don't want to actually prosecute. Prop 47 has downgraded felonies to misdemeanors. Prop 57 allows early release of violent felons from state prisons. And of course, they don't want bond. They don't want bail. What they're saying is just let people process paperwork and let them out the same very day that they're arrested. They're back out on the streets, and then typically they continue to commit more crimes. We know exactly what the agenda is. It's very clear. These people have a single focus, and that is releasing criminals and saying that people in jail should be released immediately because they're not felons, they're not criminals, and they deserve a trial. Sure, they deserve a trial, but we have a system of government that seems to work in all the other 49 states where if you're arrested, we put you behind bars in your local jail, and then you have to post bail to get out because we want you to definitely show up. We also want to give a little bit of time for your victim of your crime to basically protect themselves, particularly people who engage in domestic violence or other violent crimes. Having someone stay in jail a few nights is not a bad thing for them, gives them a bit more time. But look, the reality is this: people are given their day in court, but part of that process is detaining them in jail. There's also local time served for a variety of crimes where people don't go into a state prison, they go and they stay in local jail. Again, it's an important part of our criminal justice system. We need jails. We need to have cells where people are serving a sentence and in sheriff's custody. But there are some sheriffs who aren't playing ball. The sheriff in Riverside, the sheriff in San Diego, both of these sheriffs, the sheriff in Orange County, they're all saying, we're not going to let criminals out on the street. We're not going to do, in effect, a policy of no bail. We're going to try to keep these people off the streets. We're going to keep them behind bars. And as a result of that position taken by those sheriffs, they now have a target on their back where Newsom and the Attorney General, Democrat Rob Bonta, and the liberal media and all these activist pro-criminal groups are trying to accuse the sheriffs of misconduct, that something sinister is happening and people are dying behind bars. You don't see these arguments made in other counties because those other sheriffs are playing ball and letting the criminals out. Now, you're only seeing these targeted stories in San Diego and Orange County, in Riverside, and we're going to get the receipts on those stories. We're going to get down to the facts. So here's one story. California Attorney General investigating Riverside County Sheriff over disturbing allegations. The Desert Sun, a liberal rag, back in February published a hit piece, and they had colluded with Rob Bonta ahead of time because this hit piece came out literally the same moment that Bonta filed an announcement that he's investigating misconduct. Well, what Bonta is saying is people are dying behind bars. Yeah, and do you have evidence that somehow the sheriff's deputies did it? That's the implication that the media wants you to believe. The inference is people behind bars are dying. It must be that they're being tortured and beat up by the sheriff's deputies. No. The leading cause of death in jail, drug overdose, followed closely by suicide. Drug overdose and suicides. And you cannot blame a sheriff's deputy for that. You can't blame the sheriff or the jail system for that. You want to know who you should blame? If you're talking about drug overdoses, let's blame Gavin Newsom and Rob Bonta for having a sanctuary state and having an open border. Where are the drugs coming from? How did they get into the jail? Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at the fact that Prop 47 decriminalizes most of the drug trade crimes in the state of California. Let's look at that. Whose fingerprints are on that murder weapon? Democrats. But no. We've got to go after the sheriff because the sheriff isn't letting criminals out. That's exactly what they're demanding here. They want to smear the sheriff and say, play ball or we'll ruin your reputation. Thank goodness the sheriff is standing up in this case. Here's another one. As people keep dying in San Diego jails, Newsom signs local lawmakers' oversight bill into law. Union Tribune, again, a liberal rag that should be put out of business real soon because they're going bankrupt. Thank goodness. Every time someone unsubscribes from a liberal newspaper, an angel gets their wings. But this is a story that was published this week. It talks about two bills, Senate Bill 519 by Tony Atkins and Assembly Bill 268 by Assemblymember Akilah Weber. And it says, in the wake of repeated and continuing deaths in San Diego County jails, these liars at the Union Tribune and these lying to politicians know that the deaths are suicide and drug overdose, not violence, not use of force. They know why people are dying. There is no real mystery here, but these people want you to believe that there is some Angela Lansbury mystery that needs to be solved there. You like to throw back to the 80s? There you go. For you youngins, it's sort of like Sherlock Holmes needs to be brought in to figure out the mystery. Nope. We know what's going on. It's drug overdoses. So Senate Bill 519 creates a czar, a state director of in-custody death review, a 6-year appointment from the governor and the state senate. And they would review sheriff department investigations into jail deaths, make recommendations to improve conditions inside county jails. Well, how about they actually make recommendations as to, okay, these are mainly drug overdoses. I think we probably should do something with the drug crisis in California. Oops, did I say that? That must mean that the guy who appointed me, the governor and the state senate, are the ones actually, in fact, culpable for the deaths. Look, here's the deal. You want to use drugs? You have a risk of overdose. You want to go down the path of crime and get caught? You may see your life as over and commit suicide. That's not the fault of the sheriff. It's not the fault of society. In fact, I would venture to argue and guess that those people were given many, many opportunities by their society to turn their lives around, and they refused to. I'm not going to sit up late at night worrying about that. You play with the bull, you're going to get the horns. So that's Senate Bill 519. And Assembly Bill 268 is similar. It adds 2 board seats to the State and Community Corrections Board. And that's a board that looks at the jails. And it basically says we need a mental health professional and a medical professional added to the 13-member board. Groundbreaking. These people are like grandstanding with these bills. It's only designed to perpetuate the false narrative that somehow the sheriff is at fault for suicides and drug overdoses, when in fact it's the people inside making individual choices, and it's the politicians outside creating the bad conditions that lays the groundwork for that. One final note, take a look at this absurdity. Last month, the family of a man who overdosed in San Diego County Central Jail sues the county. So you're going to pay the piper. Taxpayers foot the bill. Why? Because someone overdosed on drugs? That sounds like it's the guy's or gal's fault who overdosed. It's not something where the taxpayers should have to shell out millions of dollars of our taxpayer money for the family of a criminal. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Oh, but they weren't judged guilty in the court of law. Something tells me that whatever they did was bad to get themselves thrown behind bars in jail. And they chose to use the drugs themselves. It's not the fault of the sheriff or the deputies. So no money for you. But in California, the liberal politicians will compensate bad behavior. Probably multi-million-dollar settlement in this case. It's disgusting. Look, we've got the inmates running the asylum. We have the inmates literally running the jails. We need to change policies in California, repealing Prop 47, which downgrades felonies to misdemeanors. We need to repeal Prop 57, which allows for early release of felons from state prison, violent felons. We need to empower our sheriffs as well as our district attorneys to enforce the law. And we need to change a variety of laws that the governor and the state assembly members and state senators have failed to reform, that promote culture of crime and enable criminals versus protecting crime victims and allow law enforcement and prosecutors to combat the criminal wave. Join us by going to the website restorepublicsafety.org. That's restorepublicsafety.org. Chip in a contribution, sign up to volunteer. Make sure you sign up so you can get the voter guide that we send out on who's good and bad on criminal justice issues. Also, help us spread the word to all of your friends about the truth about California news and politics. We get censored all the time by the liberal media, so help us break through that censorship by liking this video, commenting below, it gooses the algorithm, subscribing to this channel, and sharing this video with your friends. Until next time, it's Carl DeMaio, Chairman of Reform California. Thanks for watching. Help us break through the censorship of the liberal media by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and subscribe to my YouTube channel.